Hello there, and welcome to the Get French Football Preview Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Tom Scholes and Samuel Rooke. The international break is over, the transfer window is now behind us. Now it's back to the nitty-gritty. Unsurprisingly, there hasn't been too much news since Monday in the footballing world, so we'll instead do a bumper preview of 6 Ligue 1 games taking place this weekend. And my, it seems like it could be quite a good one if I do say so myself. We'll start off with the early game that will take place on Friday, gents, and that involves Lille and Bordeaux. And Sam, it sees the swift return of Nicolas de Préville back to the Stade Pierre-Mauroy very quickly, which gives this game a little nice subplot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. I think a lot of the fans there were sad to see him go. He signed off with the perfect sign off, a brilliant goal in his final game. But now he comes right back, and he'll be welcomed warmly. There we go. Yeah, he'll be appreciated for all his good efforts over the years.
Yeah, although El Loco doesn't seem to appreciate him as much as the fans might do. Let's start the talk off really, Tom, with Lille, who've flattered to deceive at times. They got off to a good start in that opening game, but have struggled ever since. They've had a strange window as well. What's your making of the start of the Marcelo Bielsa era?
I'm confused. If I want to be perfectly honest with it, we were talking about the sale of de Préville. I really rated him. I thought he was a really good goal scorer. And as Sam was saying, the fans liked him and appreciated him too. But for whatever reason, he just didn't seem to be Bielsa's cup of tea. I guess he's gone now. It's a strange deal, especially to sell him to a team like Bordeaux, who will be in and around the positions as well as Lille. But I thought they brought in some good-ish players, some players that would improve the team. They brought the Brazilian trio. Their names escape me at the moment, but I thought they brought some good, exciting players. But as you were saying, they flattered to deceive a little bit with the opening. I was impressed with how they started the season. And I remember the last time I was on here, I predicted them to win in exciting fashion because Marcelo Bielsa teams win in exciting fashion. But they've dropped off a little bit, and I've been disappointed. But I've learned over the years that when Bielsa's teams, you can never really predict what's going to happen next. One minute they'll pass you off the park and they'll play exciting football. The next they'll get 2 men sent off and have to put a striker in goal. You know, anything can happen in this world when he's in it. So they have been they've underperformed slightly, I would say. But given who's in charge, anything can happen, and I think there's a lot more to come from that regard.
Yeah, no, I'll be the first one to tell you that no one should underrate Nicolas de Préville. And Sam, let's talk about their window, really. I wrote a piece earlier today of how it was a strange one, and it doesn't seem to really make any sense in terms of strategy. What have you made to it? They've let a couple of decent players go at the very end. Xhaka has also gone to Dijon on loan, who performed well in the latter half of last season. Is there a sound strategy there, or does it seem a little bit gung-ho as a sort of budget Monaco at the moment?
There's 2 ways of looking at it, I think. We can look at it from what we know, and it does look rather strange from what we know. The players they've let go, the players they've signed, the Brazilian trio, they're going to take time to bed in. Selling a good right-back in Korcha, bringing in a similarly good right-back in Marquis, that seems a little bit surprising. But the other way to look at it is to look at it through Bielsa's eyes. He says he's satisfied. He says he found the players that will respond to his methods. Some of them weren't really in early enough maybe to bed into his infamously complex training schedule, training system. His tactical instructions are famously very difficult. These new players will take time to adapt. But if he says he's got the right players, then perhaps we have to just trust El Loco, which may in itself seem a crazy thing to do, but I'm not sure what else we can do.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like maybe a little bit of a crazy idea. This window for me, I wrote about it earlier, as I've mentioned, but there seems just to be some strange decisions. One of them, Rio Mavuba and Marco Basha, have been moved on, and okay, they're not necessarily starters anymore, but they're pretty much the two only other than I can think of Vincent Anyema as being another player that's sort of linked to the past of Lille of being someone who can teach these young players, even if they aren't starting regularly, about the culture, about what they expect, the classic things that a professional can sort of pass on. They've been thrown out the door for, well, two of them at least, for absolutely nothing, which seems a little bit. You could have probably got something from Avuba somewhere. Then you look at, you've mentioned it briefly there, Sam. They've signed Malqui instead of Corsier, but that's not bad. But they sold Corsier for €5 million and they signed Malqui for about 9 million. Is he that much better? I think they're on a pretty much 11 playing field, and I'd say Corsier is a better defender. So they've weakened in that sense, in my opinion at least, and they're both the same age, so you can't have the excuse of it being a younger player that they can sort of grow with. I just don't get it. I think there's too much thrown into the deep end at this team. I think there's the methods as well to a lot of young players must be daunting when you've got to learn them over the span of a summer. And then if you think about it, that some of the players that we're expecting to learn it have been moved on. Will Bielsa stay on for that long is probably the question, Tom. Can you see he's very temperamental? Will he stay on to see this out if it does take maybe a season or so?
See, that's where I think the problem's going to lie. We remember what happened at Marseille where he quit after the opening game, and I don't think anybody could have expected that. Even from him, that was unexpected by his standards. This is a club where he will want to be backed because they've made a lot of noise about they've got new owners and they're very ambitious, and they've shown their ambition by bringing in this wonderful manager that everybody loves. But if they don't keep their promises to him, and if they don't back him in the market and essentially give him what he wants, and that means full control of the playing staff, I think we might be sitting here in a year's time if they have another poor window or a poorer window than this. We might be sitting here thinking, is he going to stay, like you were saying? I think I'd probably give him this season, and I might give him next season as well, depending on, obviously, transfers and movements and whatnot. Because as you said, that there is a bedding time for a lot of these younger players who will have to adapt to this intense style of play that Bielsa has and expects from his teams. So I think a season, it will take it for the ideas to work their way into the minds of the players. I think next season is where expectations rise, in the sense that they should know what their jobs are, they should know what the system is. So I think he'll see it out to a degree, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just up sticks and leaves after one game, after one loss, because of various other reasons. You just don't know anymore.
He's combustible. There's a reason why he's called El Loco. That's what keeps you on edge, at least, if you're a Lille fan at the moment. Let's move on to their opponents, really, Sam, and that's Bordeaux. And they've had a pretty decent window. They should be aiming to be chasing for a European place again, surely, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they definitely should. They showed some green shoots toward the end of last season, but this new season, they're looking even better. Possibly their best transfer was not making a transfer in keeping Malcolm. The hype around him has begun to grow, and surely next summer he'll probably move on to somewhere bigger and better. But they've managed to keep hold of him, and that's a really significant move. They lost Adam Unas. That's a significant loss, but they got Depreville, as we've discussed, and Cafu as well. Not that one. They've improved. They look sharp. They look good, and yes, they should be aiming for European football again.
God, I'm trying to imagine if they could have pulled a coup like the old Cafu, that would have been a pretty crazy signing, to be fair. And I like a couple of their players. Francois Camano is a really good foil to Malcolm on the opposite side. He's had a good start to the season and a good end to last season. Yannis Saliba, sorry, it's Younes Sankari in the middle, who's really started to shine as well and scored a fair few goals already this season. And I do like the look of Valentin Varda. They've got a nice balance to that midfield. Now, what did you think to their summer, Tom? I mean, we've mentioned Depreville came in. Benoit Costil was brought in on a free from Rennes. That's a terrific signing of a quality Ligue 1 goalkeeper. They've brought in another couple of players in midfield as well. Do you think they've built a better squad than they had this time last year?
I'd probably say they have, because they've signed a good goal scorer in Depraville. They've got a really good right winger in Cafu, who, if I remember correctly, was quite impressive in last season's Champions League games against PSG. I think he scored when Ludogorets were at home to them. They've, as you mentioned, they've got a really good goalkeeper in Costil, who cost them nothing. You know, we talk about how much players are worth, but that has gone under the radar. It's quite for the amount of money they didn't pay, I should say. They've got a really good goalkeeper. I think, as you say, they've got a good balance. They've got a good manager as well. I like him, and I think they've got an exciting team, and they've got some good players in there that can win games. It's just a case of, you know, can they work well as a team? Have they gelled and all that? And all that. But I think the mix they've got, especially going forward, is something that I'm particularly looking forward to. I think if they get the goals in where they should be going in, really, because they've got a couple of good players there that, you know, I personally expect to hit double figures, 10 plus in certain areas, whether it be goals and assists. But I think they've got a good team, an exciting forward line, and a stable back line as well.
It's maybe centre-back I'm still a little bit worried about, but they are really, really exciting going forward. What's your prediction for this one then, Sam?
I think Bordeaux will probably put Lille in a little bit more trouble. That's my prediction. If I had to give a score, I think maybe 2-0.
Okay, and Tom?
I'm going to go for there's two exciting teams. One's unpredictable, one's really good going forward. I'm going to go for a Desmond. I'm going to go for a 2-2 in this one.
For me, Lille are a little bit predictable at the moment, and I'm going to go 3-0 Bordeaux. I've been really impressed with them so far. They've got some really good young players, and the midfield's really got a nice balance to it, which I sometimes lacked last season. And when they didn't start Varda earlier this season, I was a little bit worried, but him and Sankari are really, really good box-to-box players. The later Friday game sees Metz host Paris Saint-Germain, who will likely be starting their new loan signing, Kylian Mbappe. Tom, where do you think he will fit into this side should he start this one?
I've seen a lot of predictions saying, "Oh, he's going to be starting out on the right-hand side, and you know, Cavani's going to stay in the middle." I wouldn't be too surprised if Cavani gets put on the wing again, like he was when Zlatan Ibrahimovic was there, because you know, Mbappe played on the wing against Luxembourg for France last week in the in the international break, and whilst he was dangerous, and he was probably the brightest player on the team, and that being said, that's not a huge compliment given how they played. But he wasn't as dangerous as I felt he could be, especially when he's going down the middle. When he's running at defenders going towards goal, he's incredible. He's quick and he's dangerous. He keeps defenders on his toes. But when they have the option to show him on the outside like they would on the wing, I don't think he's that effective. So I think what we might expect to see is he might be down the middle, and someone like Cavani being put on the wing again. I wouldn't want that to happen, because I think Cavani, obviously, as last season showed, he does miss a lot, but he's a lot more clinical when he's the main striker. And I think Mbappe, you know, I'd expect him to be down the middle. I don't think he should be, but I expect that to happen.
Sam, what do you think in this situation? I mean, again, Tom hinted at there that Moni expected him to go on the right, and he did at times for France during the international break as well. Do you see that's where he's ending up, especially with Angel Di Maria having an injury as well?
I think that probably makes the most sense. That is what all the predictions are saying. That seems to be the simplest thing for Emery to do, to not have to sort of change his system too much. He can sort of go one man in, one man out. Different players, obviously, and it's not ideal for Mbappe, but I think we've discussed in the past that this move in general is probably not ideal for Mbappe, and perhaps he's going to learn that from day one, playing outside his preferred position. Generally, you don't pay 180 million euros for someone to play them out of position, but that's the situation that Paris have got themselves in.
Yeah, I suppose if there is a club that can waste that kind of money, it's maybe Paris Saint-Germain. I'm quite interested in how they do play him. I imagine he's probably going to play on the right, but they might give him a little bit more freedom maybe. Yeah, we've seen Neymar so far this season really not really stick to that left-hand side. He's cut inside quite often. He sometimes played as a 10, sometimes to pick up the ball and make things happen. Maybe that's something they give a freedom of Mbappe to do, to sort of work on wherever the ball is and link with Neymar a little bit to figure out which is best for him. Maybe they can swap sides at times. Maybe they can swap with Cavani, be a bit more free-flowing, although I don't know the Uruguayan will be so happy about that. But it'd be interesting to see how they do deploy him. But someone who's maybe caught the headlines a little bit recently is Layvin Kurzawa, Tom. He's not had the greatest of international breaks. He's been okay for Paris so far this season. He's got an excellent goal, but is his form and his defensive ability and even his attacking ability when he was on with France, is that a little bit of a worry for Paris Saint-Germain heading forward?
I think for the time being, for Paris, it's something they can almost look over because they've got other creative outlets. I'm not saying I don't think they should look over it because it is a concern, and personally, I think it has been for a while. He's not the player he should be yet. I think he should be a lot better in terms of creativity and especially defending than he is now. But there's going to get to a time where, and probably the Champions League games, especially Bayern Munich, where teams are going to look at the Paris lineup and go, where do we pick these off? Obviously, they've got a star-studded team, but where's the weaknesses in the team? And obviously, you look at Dani Alves, he's one of the greatest right-backs in modern football. But then you look on the other side and you've got Kurzawa, and that's where teams will look at, and that's where teams will try to exploit because he loves to go forward. And I don't think defensively he's all that great, to be honest. I know that's not exactly the hottest take going, but it might be a concern further down the line. And I think they should work on it now in preparation for bigger games in the future. But for the time being, I think they're able to look over it just because they've got more creative players in the team, especially going forward.
Yeah, I'm starting to worry about him a little bit. We thought at Monaco he'd be an excellent player, but his attitude and his form in the last season and a half has been cause for concern. Let's talk about their opponents, Metz, who it's a little bit cannon fodder-wise for the game on Friday. They're yet to pick up a point. They've had a pretty poor window, really, by any standards, Sam. Do they look like relegation fodder to you?
At this stage, you have to say that they do. As you say, no points from 4 games. They haven't had the toughest of fixtures. They played Guingamp, they played Caen, Bordeaux and Monaco, admittedly, not easy games, but to take nothing from any of those games is obviously not an ideal start. They've made some strange moves in the transfer window. They obviously lost Ismail Sarr, and the manager before this game, Philipp Hinchberger, has said something to the effect of, it's impossible to play football against PSG, which is hardly a rallying cry to your players. So it's really sending that kind of message that this does seem like this won't be one of the games where PSG are caught up. This seems like one that might be a bit of a gimme.
Yeah, that sounds like build the wall to me, to be fair, especially with that attacking talent on display. And yeah, I really worry about Ligue this season. You've mentioned the loss of Sarr, and it's a big one, but they got plenty of cash from that, and the investment back into the squad has been little to nothing. I mean, signing Nolan Roux and Emmanuel Riviere sounds like death row of strike forces, really, of who can try and hit the the cow's backside first. I think is never going to be either of them. I think you look through that squad. Is there really any quality in it anymore? We've seen Opine get in the past was a decent little prospect, but he's not really kicked on. They've got Vincent Till's not a bad player. He's a young prospect again that maybe they should give a chance, but there's just another lack of real quality. I think Diabate and Sarr really pulled them out of the mire last season, and they should be really, really worried that teams like Strasbourg and even Amiens were trying to get something at the window to pull something through, and they just sat there and twiddled the thumbs in the end of it, it seemed like, anyway. Let's go for your prediction first. Tom, what do you think the score will be in this one?
Well, 4-0 PSG. It's anything, really. They could demolish them or take them to the cleaners or whatever.
Yeah, I really worry for this one. I'm going to go a little bit crazy and say 7-0. But yeah, because I really fear for Metz. I think they are staring down the edge of a barrel, and if Jeremy Smith is listening, he's probably doing the same, unfortunately. But what's your prediction, Sam?
I think I'll probably have to sit in the middle and go 6 love first set.
Not much hope for Mets in the sounds of things, but let's hope they do at least something. They might hold out for 20 minutes or so. That can be maybe a little bit of a light in the dark tunnel that is their season so far. The earlier Saturday kickoff treats us to the Derby de la Côte d'Azur between Nice and Monaco. Sam, it's been an awful start really for Nice this season. They've not had the greatest of windows. A lot of old players are coming through the ranks. Schneider had an awful game against France on Thursday as well. Are they coming off the rails a little bit?
As you say, it has been a disastrous start on and off the pitch. It really doesn't look good, but to grasp at a cliche, it's a derby, so perhaps the form goes out the window, as we like to say. They're going to hope so, because their form has been absolutely disastrous. This window was a disaster. The players they lost, just key players all over the pitch. Yunus Belhanda possibly worst of all, but at least they kept Seri. That's something. They did sign some good players. Schneider is clearly lacking in fitness, but if you look at him playing in Turkey last season, he's not entirely past it. There's hope. Alain Saint-Maximin is a good fun player. He can run and run all day, playing against his former team, perhaps with a point to prove. There's hope in this game, but yeah, they're going to have to hope that the form does go out the window.
Tom, what do you think to Nice's window? I mean, it was nice to see them get Mendy back on loan, really, right at the end. That was a shrewd little move. But a lot of the other ones have just been big names that are big posters, maybe, for them to have. Are you worried about them? And especially, are you worried about possibly Lucien Favre thinking that if this continues how it is, it might be time for him to go?
Yeah, I think that's the massive concern. I think he said after the window, towards the end of it, that he was a bit disappointed with the dealings that had been done, and I can see why. I can see why a manager would be disappointed with deals like this. I mean, you won't find many people that are bigger fans than Wesley Sneijder than myself, but it's if you've ever seen the film The Wrestler, it's like Randy the Ram coming back. He's not fully past it, but he's not quite what he used to be. And when he plays poorly, it's quite sad to see, especially when he did against France. It's a big name, it gets attention, and it almost feels like the Nice trying to resurrect another player from the wilderness, like they did with Balotelli and Ben Arfa. But they've lost some key players. Belhanda, Pereira have all gone back on loan. Dalbert, who is a fantastic left back in my opinion, he's gone to Winter, he's moved on. They kept Seri, but how long's he going to be there for? If he carries on with good form, he might be gone soon. We don't know. And I think another person that might be gone, I don't think he'll be there next season. He might be there after the winter break, is Lucien Favre, because he's quite rightly annoyed. He's quite rightly disappointed, and I think he's quite rightly looking at this team and thinking, where's the inspiration coming from? You can't rely on Mario Balotelli to drag you through a season. He's just not that kind of player. Alain Saint-Maximin's a very good, exciting player, but his end product leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know. It does look quite bad for Nice, but anything could be going on. I don't think Favre will be there next season. I think they're going to have a tough time getting anywhere near their success last season.
Well, if Favre is listening, and he is my spirit animal, so let's hope he is. I think he might be clinging on to the hope that when Willian Cyprien comes back, they might have something. I'm just imagining in my head that, and yes, follow me on here because I might sound a little bit crazy for a moment, but with Napoli's Mondi back, play him as a defensive midfielder. You play Seri and Cosiello next to him, two nice box-to-box midfielders. Cosiello is a little bit tidier. Seri's a great creative player and scorer as well. Cyprien is that centre-attacking midfielder behind a strike force of player and Alain Saint-Maximin, and all of a sudden, it doesn't sound so bad. You've got Souquet at right back. I'd play whoever at left back at the moment. It seems that was the real issue that they didn't really end up fixing. And they also need a goalkeeper. So the worry is still defence, but the hope is that something like that might give them a little bit of guile, a bit of change of formation, something a little bit different might do something. But let's talk about their opponents, Monaco. Sam, even though they lost a fair few players, in the end, in France at least, did they win the window? They brought in some talented players.
The extent that you can win while losing that many of your starting players, I mean, Bakayoko, Mendy, Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, Saint-Germain, didn't necessarily start every game, but was hugely valuable. That's a lot of players to lose, some willingly, some less so. But you look at the quality of players they brought in. I mean, Tielemans, he could be anything. Jovetic, great player, great squad player to have. Jordi and Buller, another with just immense potential. And Keita Balde, that was a real surprise towards the end of the window there. But what a great signing to get a guy that Juventus wanted. Juventus were playing hardball. Monaco come in, get their man. They've done amazingly well and made a huge profit, which is obviously the model, and that's going to fund the next round of young stars to come in.
Yeah, well, like you say, winning the window can be a difficult thing to say, but I don't think I've seen a team do better at trying to rebuild something that's crumbled in front of them almost. Tom, we know you're very versed in the Italian football as well, so I'll ask you what you think of Keita Balde. I'm very excited to see him in Ligue, and I expect him to probably be more of a replacement for Mbappe, am I right? Rather than a Bernardo Silva, he's more probably going to play up front.
Yeah, I mean, he's an incredible talent. There's a reason Juventus and Spurs wanted to sign him this season, not to fill the squad, because he was a genuinely fantastic player. And I think what makes him so exciting as well is that you watch him playing. It's a bit like Mbappe in this sense. And obviously not as with a higher ceiling, but in the sense that he's already really talented now. But because he's so young, you know he can go to another level. And I think that's where the hype's the wrong word, because it sounds like there's nothing to it. But the genuine excitement that people have for this player, he's a talent. He's probably going to play down the middle up front, off Falcao, almost replicating what he did at Lazio with Ciro Immobile, in the sense that you'd have a pure striker next to a pacey, creative player. And it's going to be great to watch. And I think that's another deal that Monaco have done that has gone under the radar, in the sense that the big miss in European football this season has been Monaco have had a bad summer. Yes, they've lost a lot of players, but they've got really good players in to fill in the gaps left by the ones that have sold. In particular, Keita Balde and Yuri Tielemans, who's another player that Football Manager players will have known since the years he was 16, 17 years old. But for Keita Balde, he's likely to be up front. He's likely to be a really exciting player. And I think, he's going to do well. He's going to do well, I think.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win for Monaco in this one. What's your prediction, Sam?
I think 3-0. It's a bit more pain for Nice, I'm afraid.
Tom?
I'm going to be kinder, like I have been to Metz earlier, and just go for the 2-0 Monaco.
Not much confidence in Nice yet again, but a little bit unsurprising given their start to the season. Let's move on to the Sunday fixtures, and that starts with Saint-Etienne hosting Angers. An intriguing little fixture, really, between two sides that have started the season relatively well, Tom. Let's focus on Les Verts first. Is this an ideal opportunity for them to bounce back from that defeat to Paris Saint-Germain before the international break?
Yeah, I mean they got a tough fixture, the toughest fixture they'll get all season before the international break. And on one hand, they'll look at it and go, and that's the 100% record gone. But on the other hand, which is the more likely way they're going to look at it, they've got a tough fixture out the way, and they can come back fresh, prepared for an easier fixture. It won't be easy on the day, but they'll be looking at it knowing and confident that they can get all 3 points out of it. I think that's how they're going to look at it. They're going to go in there with a lot of confidence, despite the defeat to Paris Saint-Germain, and I think they're going to come back and I've got them down for a win for this one.
Sam, I wanted to talk to you about their window, because we mentioned on Monday's programme about who we thought won the window in France, and no one really mentioned this team, because I was thinking to myself that they've brought in Bamba, they've brought in Diousse, they've brought in Remy Cabella on the final day as well. There's a fair few good players in that team that they've added to a squad to really refresh them. What do you think to their window?
You're right. It is one that went under the radar pretty significantly. A lot of players, names people have known, they've been around forever. have sort of moved on. Guys like Malqui, Vertu, Saivet, these sorts of guys. And so a lot of people probably not paying that much attention, maybe thought, well, not a great window for them. But Saint-Etienne, really useful player. Bamba already looking very refreshed, put back in this team. Oscar Garcia has put his trust in him again. It's been a fine window for a team that doesn't have a lot of money to play with. They've refreshed the team. They look better. They look free under this new manager, and it's just a fine window for them.
Yeah, and we mentioned Malqui earlier, but I think they've done a terrific thing in moving him on and getting some money for him, really, because I think, as well as Sadio, they've got Ronald Pierre Gabriel, who can play left back as well, and he's a fantastic young fullback. While the international break's been on, I've been watching quite a few different young players from around France and getting a little bit of a closer look. And I think he's an excellent young player. He's really, really impressed me, not just from an attacking sense. I think he's an excellent defender as well, which can be really rare to see in a young fullback. And he's got a really promising future if he continues on that path he's on at the moment. It's strange that he didn't really play for the under-21s during this international week. Maybe someone's not watching him as much as I have been. But another team that had an excellent little window, Tom, is Angers. They've brought in what I think is still possibly the best budget signing in Tomatore, coming in for €2 million. They've brought in Fulgini, who's had a good start to the season. They've got a nice attacking balance there, maybe changing their identity from that defensive style we saw a few years ago. What do you think to this team at the moment and how they've been built over the summer window?
I think it's been a good window for them because they've managed to build a team of really good players, as you said, on a budget. They're not spending ridiculous amounts of money, but they've got players there that will improve the team. I think they're going to do well this season. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near... relegation is just a no-no for them. It's just not happening. But I think they might be pushing up for upper mid-table, and they might just be scratching at the floor of, Europa League qualification. They're well coached. They've got some good players, and I think they're a good team, especially. But I don't know. It seems odd to be sitting here and going, Angers, yeah, they're Europa League challengers, but they've brought that many good players in, and people are that impressed by them. It doesn't seem so silly anymore.
And they managed to keep Carl Toko Ekambi on that final day. He was linked with Brighton, maybe not quite as strongly as they hoped, but Tom's briefly mentioned it. Do you think Angers might be a dark horse for those European spots, especially if another team falls out? I mean, they've had a really excellent sort of 2017, reaching a cup final, getting away from that real dire end to 2016 as well. They're a really interesting side again.
They are, and they've proven that they've made themselves hard to beat. This year, as you say, they're not a team that goes down. They're not a team that gives up, as they perhaps were in the past. Reaching the cup final is something to be proud of, but qualifying for the Europa League is something they could aim for, and that would be a huge achievement for a club that, as we've mentioned, really has to work within a budget that most competitors at the top end of the league just don't have to do. The signings they've made are these shrewd, careful signings. You're raiding relegated clubs. You're picking up young players from PSG like Kanga. These sorts of savvy signings. It's not the kind of thing that makes headlines. No one talks about them as, well, they've really armed up this summer, but they've made smart moves, and they are the kind of team that could be rewarded with finishing in the sort of top 6, top 7, because other clubs have not been as clever.
Yeah, and if they have a really successful season, some people are going to should be talking about both Stéphane Moulin, the manager, and some of the players in the backroom staff that have really brought some of these excellent little deals through the door. Because if I'm a smaller club or in the Premier League, I suppose, or something like that, I would be definitely looking at a team that's doing stuff like that. Moulin's set up a good side that was strong and defensive, and has sort of slowly adapted it into a more exciting sort of team over time, which is a really excellent thing to do, I think. And like you said, the way they work their budget and bring in these little under-the-radar signings shouldn't really be underestimated. It's been really, really excellent stuff from them, and let's hope that they can maybe upset the apple cart a little bit. But will they upset the apple cart in this game, Sam? What's your prediction?
It's a tricky one, this one. Difficult to say who's going to finish on top, but I'd like to see Saint-Etienne bounce back. So I'm going to go for Saint-Etienne in a 1-0 win.
I'm thinking the same way. I'm thinking 2-1 to Saint-Etienne. It's going to be close, and I really like Angers, but Saint-Etienne are just a little bit better quality-wise, I think, at the moment. Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to have to second that. Angers, they're going to give them a good game. It's going to be a fun game to watch, but ultimately I think Saint-Etienne are bouncing back. It's going to be 2-1.
Right, let's move on to the next game on Sunday, and that will be from crosstown rivals, Lyon, as they take on Guingamp. Sam, the visitors had to fight off strong interest in Yanis Saliba again, as a sign from Saint-Etienne, and what another terrific signing that would have been. How well did they do to retain his services and sort of stay where they are at the moment, at least?
That's always the difficulty, is hanging on to these sorts of players when people come in for them, and a club like Guingamp, they don't have the size, the strength. They can't throw a new contract down on the table. So to just keep hold of key players like Saliba is a huge achievement for a club that's really enjoying one of its best ever periods. This is a time for Guingamp just to revel in being a proper Ligue side, a side that can keep their players and can compete with those, the clubs in the middle and even in the upper reaches of the table.
My advice to Guingamp next summer and at the winter window is probably turn your phone off for that final day. People keep bringing it on that final day for Saliba and try and steal him at the last moment. They're right little cheeky monkeys from my point of view. So maybe turn it off next time, I think. Let's talk about Lyon, Tom. And they've had a couple of draws in the last couple of games. That one at Nantes, yes, Tatarusanu was excellent, but is it a little bit worrying that they're slowly sort of, that head of steam they built up in the first two games is slowly going out of them?
I think if they drop more points here, then I think that becomes a major concern. Because at the start of the season, everyone was saying, us included, they're exciting, they're fun to watch. They've got a good front line. They're a really good team. But then they drop a few points in games they should be winning, And I think if they drop more points here, and I like Guingamp. I think they're a good team. I think they're a very competitive team. But at the same time, Lyon should win this, as they should have against Nantes. However, if they drop more points here, then I think they're going to have to start looking at it, and I think they're going to have to start figuring out where they were going wrong, making some changes, because I think dropping more points in games you should win is for what Lyon want to achieve. It just cannot happen. So I think more drop points here, then I think it becomes a worry.
And Sam, what did you think to their window? I mean, in the final day, they brought in Ndombele from Amiens to replace Sergio Darder, who's headed back to Espanyol on loan. They've lost so many big players during the summer window, but they've brought in some decent moves at least. Is this maybe them making the best out of a bad situation?
I think that's probably the most charitable way that you could phrase it. Ultimately, they lost a lot of significant players. Some apparently willingly. Mamana, that was a surprise to me, but they were happy to let him go. Lacazette, he'd sort of served his time, gone along similarly. Tolisso, you can't really turn down a bid of that magnitude. And the players they brought in, they seem to have done well. Things seem to have gone fairly well. We've talked about Traore and Mariano Diaz before. Both seem like great signings. Kenny Tete, that seems like a shrewd move for practically free in this day and age. As you say, they've done just about the best that they could have done, and they've made themselves a handy profit too.
Yeah, and we were mentioning this with Eric on Monday. I really like the look of Ndombele. Him mixing with Luka Toussaint and being a bit more inventive maybe than Darder was, especially in France at least, that they could make a nice little duo behind those attacking four. And maybe he might be just the spark they need to kick them back up a gear. What do you think your prediction will be in this one, Tom?
I'm going to go for a 2-0 Lyon win.
Sam?
3-0 Lyon.
I'm going to go for 3-1. I think that that front four might show itself again this weekend. Let's hope they do for our entertainment purposes at least. We finish tonight at the Stade Velodrome where Marseille will host Rennes. Tom, L'OM were hit hard before the international break as Monaco notched 6 past them. Was that a real wake-up call from their decent start to the season?
Yeah. I think it was a smack in the face that every team that wants to build something eventually gets. You know, they weren't always going to have it easy. They weren't always going to. If they were going to lose it, it certainly wasn't going to be 1-0. You know, I don't think people expected them to lose that badly, and I don't think people expected them to play as badly as they did. But knowing Rudy Garcia like he is, like he has been before, he'll take that loss. Through the international break, he'll look where they went wrong, and they brought in some more defenders in Abdenor, and I think that smack in the face is what they. OM fans probably won't agree with this, but it's probably what they needed to give them a bit of a reality check and bring them back down to earth after a pretty good start. I think Garcia would have taken this, he would have learnt from it, and he would have implemented it on the team. And I think what we might get is a more ruthless Marseille team that doesn't concede as many chances as they did against Monaco. And I know that's easier said than done against a really entertaining Monaco team, but they were poor, and they didn't even create anything or look like they were creating anything. So I think they would have taken the slap in the face they had, and they would have learned from it. I don't doubt for 1 second that they didn't learn anything from this game.
Sam, what did you think to their end of their window? We've mentioned the experience they've brought in, and Tom touched on Abdenor, and they brought in Mitroglou as well in the very end to finally get an extra striker up there. Is Champions League achievable for this team, or are they still a little bit of a way off?
I think ultimately when you make this many changes to a team, they've practically bought themselves an entire new starting 11. It's always difficult to predict how it's going to bed in, but you have to have your doubts that it's all just going to happen right away. And if their aim is to be the best of the rest, which is realistically the best they could possibly aim for, get that third place, get there ahead of the likes of Lyon, perhaps some other dark horse might storm up there ahead of them as well. They need this all to just knit in really well. I think Mitroglou is a really good signing. I know for most English fans, he's largely remembered for the unpleasantness at Fulham. But in the rest of his career, he's a goal in every other game centre forward, 10 years, reliable, proper centre forward, can play by himself, can play in a 2. He could sort of do it all, and he gives them options. Finally, now they have genuine attacking options. They have some depth. They have depth, enviable depth as far as Ligue 1 goes. There are few clubs outside the 2 super clubs who can match them for depth. And in that way, if they can learn whatever lessons there are to be learned from getting beaten 6-1, maybe tighten up a little bit, maybe Abdenor helps there a little bit, then yeah, they can certainly aim for third place. It's not an unreasonable thing to set out their stall for, to shoot for third. But it's still difficult. It's still very early, and there's still a lot of work to be done by Garcia there because, as we've mentioned, it wasn't good. That performance against Monaco was not good. It was very much the opposite, and they certainly can't be anywhere near that bad ever again if they've got any sort of optimistic hopes of even finishing in the top half, let alone the top 3.
Absolutely. That should be a message to every single one of their players, really, after that one. On to Rennes, really, Tom. And they spent a little bit more than usual in this window, and they had an interesting end, at least anyway. They brought Wabi Kazri back to France on loan, and Diafra looked like he was coming, went to watch some horses for a little bit, and then spoke to the owners for a little bit. It was a really strange afternoon for him, at least anyway. Does that increase expectations on them, especially after this really dismal start to the season?
I think a little bit. I think it does a bit because when you bring in players like, I know, Wabi Kazri probably didn't exactly do himself any good at Sunderland, but then again, hardly anybody did in that Sunderland team. But they bought, in my opinion, one of the best young talents we've seen in League One last season in Ismaili Sarr. You know, and when you sign a player like him, expectations go up on the team, and from fans especially. So I think they are under pressure to achieve something, but I think the problem is I don't think they can, because I don't think, maybe a fault of their own, but I think the other teams ahead of them are just better, and I think that's what's going to be the problem with them. They've spent a lot of money on the players they've brought in, and they've also obviously they brought some cash in, but the problem they're going to have is that they're caught in the area where, what do you go for? Do you go to achieve something, or do you stick to mid-table safety and then try to build something like an Angers, as we mentioned before? They're building something, what they're trying to do. I think they're caught at a bit of a crossroads at the moment.
Yeah, I get exactly where you come from. And there was rumours earlier this week, Sam, that Gourcuff maybe is on the edge. There's reports that maybe if he doesn't win this game, it might be a struggle, or there was other ones conflicting saying that he had 3 games left and needed 6 points from them, really. He's on the hot seat, isn't he?
He is, yeah. I mean, that's the same stories that I think we've been reading, is that from these next 3 games, 3 not easy games, away to Marseille, away to Saint-Etienne, and home against Nice. Okay, maybe 1 easy game. If he has to get 6 points from that to keep his job, that's a very tall order for a team that has not looked good. That's not fair. They've been spotty. At moments they've looked good. Patches of games they've looked good, but they still look very much a work in progress. And if you have to win 2 out of these 3 games, you can't be a work in progress. You really need to hit the ground running coming out of this international break. Maybe the break will have done them good, will have allowed Gourcuff time on the training pitch to try and figure out what he's trying to do. But then Ismail Assar's been off on international duty. Some of his key players are not going to be there. So then this break doesn't actually serve to help in the way that it might do. There's been rumours that Claude Puel, who doesn't currently have a job, could be the one to come right in, and that just puts more pressure on Gourcuff, who has not done a great job so far.
Yeah, it doesn't help when a former Ligue manager that's had success here in the past is waiting in the wings and available. It does put a lot of pressure on him, at least this one. And I think that's probably maybe going to play a little bit of a factor in this one. But Rennes have been pretty solid defensively. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win from Marseille. What do you think, Tom?
I think they're 2-0 Marseille. They're quite good at home. And I think they'll bounce back from that 6-0 defeat. And I think it'll be 2-0.
Sam?
I think Rennes are going to show a bit of fight, and I think we're going to get something like a 2-2.
Will that please anyone? I don't know. That's all for this evening. My thanks to Tom, Sam, and all of you listening at home. Join us for the main show again on Monday, and enjoy your weekend of football.